Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdsson of World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by John Sneisen, who authored the book, The End of Freedom, How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us. He's also on the Executive Council of Freedom Force International, the Manitoba Party. He owns and operates The Economic Truth, and every time I talk to him I keep telling him, this resume is getting longer and longer and longer. I'm just going to have to cut stuff out eventually when I introduce you from now on. But there's some really important stuff happening in the news right now, as always, but it just keeps building up higher and higher and higher. And I wanted to ask John about what's happening in Venezuela, because this is something that we need to be keeping our eyes on.
Yeah, no, what's happening in Venezuela right now is quite interesting. From them being so dependent on oil prices, what will happen is that they really need to revamp or do something different. They're a communist government, which nobody really talks about, first of all, so they need the central planning, and their economy is extremely dependent on the oil price. So their budget is $140 a year for a barrel. That's going to make a surplus spending for the government. Well, now think about it, the price has dropped to around 30 right now, like it's hovering at 33 today. But that means that the cost, let's do the quick number here, it's almost 5 times less worth than the actual government needs to run a surplus. So that means that the government income has been cut by about 80%.
Yeah. Which
is huge. So what are you going to do when that happens? Well, you're going to have a huge problem, and you need to spend that money. So the way they spend that money, well, the only way you can do it without raising taxes, which is when you live in a communist country, there's really no taxes. The way you do it is by printing more money. It's very simple. So what we've seen in Venezuela right now is the Venezuelan government, over the last year, the official number that they put out is 108% inflation, which is insane. That means that your prices over doubled.
Yeah.
In food and so on. Well, then take a look at the official number from the IMF that they put out. It's 275%. So think about that. If the prices of something that you needed, all commodities, went up by 275%. That is quite insane. That's basically prices almost tripling in a year.
Yeah.
How are you going to be able to afford things when you actually triple the cost of living?
Yeah.
It's insane. So the Venezuelan government, what they're doing is they're trying to keep their communist society going by just printing more money. And also what they've done, and this is, we can talk about this, what's coming, what Obama did. Obama, during his executive order, I forgot the number, but he made an executive order that says that Venezuela is a national threat to the United States.
What?
The reason is that a lot of banks have invested heavily in Venezuelan debt, which was how they printed all this money, right? And they're on the hook for it, so it's a national threat. So that means that the U.S. government will probably try to bail out Venezuela when it really gets bad down there, because they want to save their banks. I wrote about this in my book, actually, and I have a list of just recent debtors.
Yeah.
And the United States is by far the ones that have bought the most amount of Venezuelan government bonds.
Yeah.
Actually, the Norwegian government, where I'm from, like our oil fund, actually bought as well Venezuelan debt, and it's not going to be repayable. You're not going to have that debt anymore. And what we're going to see, I predicted this in 2015. I was a little bit early. Of course, predictions are hard to make, but definitely the hyperinflation in Venezuela is a lot more closer today than it was in 2015. It was very high inflation at that time, but you're going to get to a point where prices and everything are rising so much that the people of Venezuela is going to say, I don't want that Venezuelan Bolivar anymore. It's worthless.
Yeah.
And this is what happens with any fiat currency that is out there. It always fails that way because people don't trust that the paper currency will ever have value again.
Well, of course. Well, historically, we've seen what happens to basically every paper currency, going back to China back in 1024, through the Byzantines. I mean, this is a great example of what to not do, what kind of economic practice to not practice. And, you know, we always hear from communists at WAM that, you know, the communist economies are the best in the world and, you know, they don't fail, and that it's somehow you're being enslaved by capitalist systems which don't even really exist in present-day society. So what do you think is a long-term kind of diagnosis you give to Venezuela and how it'll affect the rest of the world?
I think the long-term effect is going to be they're going to end up like Puerto Rico, like Detroit and everybody else. They're going to have to go bust on their debt. They can't pay it back. Like every other country, like I'm not just Venezuela, but this is eventually everybody's going to go bust on their debt and not be able to repay it because it's gotten so massive. I think what's going to happen on the long term for Venezuela is we're going to probably see that the people are going to get fed up. Well, you have a lot of people that moved out already. You know, like the most productive people always moves out when it's economic turmoil, and then they leave the country with people that don't know how to create a business, and they're just dependent on the government. So I think that's I think a civil war could actually break out in Venezuela. It's quite possible. Also, I think what's going to happen is not just a possibility for civil war, but also that you're going to have massive immigration to the countries around Venezuela. People are going to leave Venezuela, and they're also scared of the big government. I think you're going to see if it's not turning around in a more libertarian direction, not libertarian, but in like moving towards a more freer society, it's going to do the opposite and become more tyrannical. I think that's a huge possibility, actually. So I think Venezuela, unfortunately, I got some friends on my Facebook that are following the Venezuelan government, and I think we got a lot of danger going on with their country, and for the whole world. I think who's on the hook is well, there we got the police, by the way. What's going on is that the Venezuelan government is gonna double down, and then what's gonna happen is we're just gonna probably see bailouts of the government by the Federal Reserve, probably, because the Federal Reserve has given money to the American banks that have bailed them out. Not bailed them out, but that have invested in the government debt that's not going to be repayable, and it's become a national threat to the United States. That's what Obama says. So I think for that's another one of the like snowflakes that James Rickards, Polka Robinson, and a whole bunch of others that are talking about. There's so many different little snowflakes that could trigger that avalanche. So I think the government debt in Venezuela, it's not going to ever get paid back, and I think they're going to end up in hyperinflation in 2016. If not in 2016, I think it's going to happen very, very soon, because people are only going to be able to cope with that, like rising prices for a certain amount of time, until they can't afford any more like when the prices of bread and everything is increasing, that's when you get a revolution. So I think that's the future for Venezuela right now. Venezuela revolt, civil unrest, maybe even war, and hyperinflation. I think unfortunately that's the way Venezuela is going right now, with the continuing low oil prices, which is probably going to continue for half more years. So
well, and as J. Edward Griffin told us not that long ago, it's like the story of Chicken Little. He said the sky was falling, and he wasn't exactly right that when the sky was falling, but he was right that it was going to fall. And it's hard to make exact predictions, but around 2016, 2017, 2018, within that kind of parameter, you think?
Oh, totally. And it has to happen. Like I can't see anything else except for like bailouts and stuff, which is just going to worsen it. And then you got to get more of it. So I think we're like, as I said, we're looking for like a bigger crash very soon. But my worries is that the central bankers are so adamant that they want growth in the world economy, that when you're not getting growth, they're panic and they didn't want to print money either through cheap money policies, which they have now, negative interest rates, or through printing money, just printing money out of thin air and having the government spend it on wasteful things.
Okay, well, one question. Do you think the central banks really want to grow any economies, or is that, because it doesn't seem like they're really pushing towards actually growing economies. It looks like they're purposely trying to crash them.
Well, I think it's a little bit of that, but when it comes to the system, debt always needs to grow because there's more and more debt that they need to make more and more profit. As when you get more and more debt, there's higher and higher inflation, so they need more and more profits and more dividends for shareholders. So it's just a system that forces everybody to make an excess of something and create more. Like the centrally planned Chinese economy, which they say, no, we need 10% growth this year, so let's build a whole ghost city. And there you go, which has no demand. There's nobody living there, but at least we got 10% growth. Like GDP growth has nothing to do with the world. There would be depression, there would be deflation and inflation because of you got our populations and demographics are growing up and down. You have a constant wave of different people are born, a lot of them the baby boomer class, which is going to be this demographic cliff that we're going to hit right now, where people are going to just downsize and everything. And that's what's going to happen. I think Venezuela is just doomed to repeat their, I forgot, I got to look at the number, we'll do that later, but the number is actually that their last Bolivarian currency that Chavez had did not last for very long. I think it lasted for about 8 years. And I think this currency is right about the same to fail at the same amount of time. So it seems like in Venezuela, they've been ridden with hyperinflationary scenarios. So I think the Venezuelan Bolivar would be a thing of the past in at least 2 years from now, for sure.
Well, it's certainly a bad time in the world for world economics, for inflation, and everything else that has anything to do with the monetary system. It's a mess worldwide right now. So stay tuned for more from us. We've got lots more coming. We're heading out to Gimli, Manitoba right now to do an interview with someone, and we're just looking forward to the next couple of weeks because we've got so much coming out, and just stay tuned. This is Josh Sigurdsson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.